Good afternoon. Nearly evening, I have to check, right? So I just want to have a little chat about Conor McGregor, right? And the poll that has come out in the Sunday Independent that suggests, well, they've done two polls, right? They've done one poll, which is interesting, in, I think, December 2023, that found that 8% of people would vote for Conor McGregor if he ran for public office. They've conducted another one now in April of this year, and they found that 7% said that they would vote for Conor McGregor. What's the sample size? 2,072 people, as far as I understand it. Right. So they asked 2,072 people, and 7% of that number said that they'd vote for Conor McGregor. Okay, so we'll have a little chat about who are these entities, right? Because it's easy to say this company, this newspaper conducted a poll and they found this. Okay, so who owns that newspaper? What ideology do they lean towards, if any, right? Are they impartial? Who are the people they asked? How many people? Are we sure that the numbers that they're reporting are legitimate, right? So it's always worthwhile having a look at the little backgrounds of these things. And then look, as always, I'll leave it up to yourselves to decide whether things are on the straight and narrow or things aren't, right? So who owns the Sunday Independent? It's an Irish newspaper. It's not owned by Irish people, right? So the Sunday Independent is owned by a media company called Media House, it looks like. Media Huis, right? And these guys they also acquired the Independent News and Media in Ireland, which is a big conglomerate. It owned a lot of the media in Ireland, right? And they got that, I think, in 2020, 2019. But Media House the company's headquartered in Belgium. Its largest shareholders include the Belgian Baert family, B-A-E-R-T, the Dutch Van Puijenbroek family, Puijenbroek, and the Belgian businessman Thomas Leysen, Leysen. Now, Media House, while it is Dutch and Flemish, or it's Dutch and Belgian, they have a significant stake in the media in Ireland. And I'll go over some of the papers that they own, right? So, Irish Independent, the Sunday World, the Herald, Belfast Telegraph, Sunday Life, and they also own regional newspapers. And you'd ask yourself, why would European families who are still on the continent have any interest in owning the Kerry Man, the Cork Man, the Drogheda Independent, the Sligo Champion, Wicklow People, Wexford People, the Bray People, the Argus, New Ross Standard, the Enniscorthy Guardian, the Gorey Guardian? Why would European families have any interest in owning these small regional newspapers, right? So Media House, interestingly, they also own the digital marketplaces like Cars Ireland and CarsOwn.ie. Interesting, right? So, as I said earlier, they acquired the Independent News and Media, or the INM, and the previous owners of the INM were Dennis O'Brien and Dermot Desmond. Right, you'll remember Dennis O'Brien because he's caught up in that ESAT Digifone scandal thing from the Moriarty Tribunal, which has linked Michael Lowry to, we'll say, his over enthusiasm in getting ESAT Digifone up and off the ground, right? And just at the same time that this was going on, there was funds coming from Dennis O'Brien into the sale of property that Michael Lowry owned at the time, right? So there's all that stuff going on in the background. So this thing looks like it stinks, okay? But Dennis O'Brien relinquished he sold it, right? He sold the INM to Media House. And he also owned Communicore, which he sold to the Bayer company family, Baur, media company in 2021. Now, Bayer owns a lot of, while media houses around newspapers, Bayer tends to focus on the acquisition of radio stations, right? So News Talk is owned by this crowd, Bayer, Baur. They're worth looking into to see how deep their reach is, not just in Ireland, but across all of Europe, okay? Now, I mentioned, I got his name now, sorry. I just threw this together a few minutes ago, but it's related to something else that I want to be doing. It's a kind of bigger picture on public opinion shaping, right? Poll use and all that kind of stuff. Propaganda, essentially, right? State-sponsored propaganda. So we have the guy Leysen, and he was a member of the European Roundtable of Industrialists, the ERT, a lobbying group that interacts with EU policymakers to promote business-friendly policies, right? So this guy is part of the ownership of the newspaper that conducted this poll, right? And we'll get into that in a couple of seconds. Media House also acquired Euractiv, Euractiv, a paper which tends to quibble over the policies. It's a pan-European newspaper, right? Oriented or aimed at the EU and what's going on in the EU, right? It doesn't really seem to question the legitimacy of the power that the EU holds. It just kind of quibbles over policy, right? So one example is a story that they're not pushing through the Digital Act quickly enough for them, right? That kind of thing. So when you have media outlets that are supposed to be critical of an organization, but one of their complaints is that the organization is not furthering its agenda quickly enough, you're dealing with propaganda, okay? You're dealing with propaganda. Unless it kind of balances it with a legitimate assessment of the power that these organizations wield, right? So the second party involved in the Sunday, is it the Sunday Independent? The Sunday Independent, which conducted the poll regarding Conor McGregor and his 7%, is called Ireland Thinks. So what is it? Ireland Thinks is an Irish polling and market research company founded in 2020 by Kevin Cunningham. What's he a part of? A former Labour Party strategist and lecturer at Technological University, Dublin, right? Now, what's their track record like? The family referendum in, was it when was that? 2024 now. 2024, I think, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. But time gets muddled a bit, right? So the results. The referendum failed, right, in the redefining or opening up the definition of family, with 66.7 people voting no and 32.3 people voting yes. Miserable turnout, 44%. Where did Ireland Thinks, what were their polls telling them? They changed over time, right? They started out as nearly 60% overwhelming yes. It's going to go through. We're going to redefine what the Irish people are telling us that are totally on board with redefining the family. The actual, how their later poll corresponded with the results. Ireland Thinks they overestimated the yes support by about 15 to 20 percentage points, right? Okay, you get one wrong. Now, the second part of that referendum was the care referendum, which is to get rid of gendered language, right? That kind of nonsense. Take the mother out of the Constitution, essentially. So the result, the amendment was rejected with 73.9% voting no and 26.1% voting yes. Again, Ireland Thinks significantly overestimated the yes support, missing the mark by 25 to 30 points in its final poll. That's 25 to 30 points, massive. 2 for 2. Just way off. For a project that aims to capture the sentiment and the feeling and the perspective of the people, they are 20 to 30 percentage points off hang on, actually, I want to be particular about that. So 25 to 30, 15 to 20, we'll go 40, we go about 40 percentage points off between the two of them, right? So on average, for two of them, they're 20 points off. They're 20% way different than what the people are actually willing to vote on. 2020 election. Sinn Féin won 24.5% of first preference votes, topping the popular vote, with Fianna Fáil getting 22.2 and Fine Gael 20.9. Ireland Thinks under-predicted Sinn Féin by 3 to 5 points, or percentages, right? And Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael were overestimated slightly. 2024, 3 for 3, wrong. And you can quibble about it, going, well, look, certain polls, there's always going to be a margin for error, 2 to 3%. Fair enough. But 25 to 30% difference, make up your own mind. Right, 2024 election. Exit polls and tallies showed Sinn Féin at 21.1, Fine Gael at 21, and Fianna Fáil at 19.5, with final results confirming close three-way split, right? The discrepancy. Ireland Thinks overestimated Fianna Fáil's popular vote 2 or 3 points again, and underestimated Sinn Féin's resilience, right? So there is a pattern beginning to emerge here that they tend to favour or over-predict, over-appreciate the support that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have, and underappreciate the support that Sinn Féin had, and the independents. Now, so that's 4 of them wrong. And I asked today, when have any of these polls been correct? And Ireland Thinks, the party that conducted this poll with the Sunday Independent, they've been wide of the mark on all major polls that they've conducted. I think they started around 2020, and they've been wrong on all of them, right? They've missed the mark. And to be honest, they lean towards boosting the consensus, if you can call it that, right? They lean towards boosting the positive sentiment people have towards the status quo, and they downplay what is antagonistic to that, at least on paper. Okay. So, what do these newspapers that benefit from? We see the connection with the EU. Strange. We now look nationally. Do these newspapers that are owned by European families, right? Strangely strange. The Kerryman is owned by Dutch and Belgian families. Bizarre, right? And their station media house is stationed in Brussels, right? I wonder if they share Christmas cards with the EU. But nationally, do these newspapers benefit from the government? They do, right? So we remember that the value-added tax was scrapped, the VAT for newspapers. Yeah. And this policy is reaffirmed in the budget 2023 when the government extended this rate to certain digital publications or e-newspapers under the EU VAT directive changes, right? So order coming down from the EU. The EU is very interested in Irish newspapers for whatever reason. They're very interested in Irish newspapers staying solvent, right? So Irish government and the taxpayers now, we need to bail these papers out. So our taxes will sneak up a little bit because the VAT on newspapers is chopped off now because the EU told this government to do so. And through the Comisiún na Méin, the Irish media regulator, which was established in 2022, the state has allocated grants to news organisations. In 2024, 5.7 million was distributed to various outlets, including newspapers, to support journalism in the public interest. While specific recipients vary, regional titles like the Kerryman, which is owned by Media House, benefited from that financially, right? So explicitly mentioned as reporting a 14% revenue increase to 1.13 billion in 2021, Media House claimed that is probably due to government advertising, right? And they also own, as we said already, the Irish Independent, the Sunday Independent, the Sunday World, the Herald, the Belfast Telegraph, Kerry Man, Cork Man, Drogheda Independent, the Sligo Champion, Wicklow People, Wexford People, Bray People, the Argos, New Ross Standard, the Enniscorthy Guardian, and the Gorey Guardian, right? So make up your own mind around that. Now, the budget's 2025, €8.3 billion package announced in October 2024 included allocations for public messaging on housing and energy, with newspapers likely securing contracts to disseminate this information. This information, right? Two different words. THIS information, not that other nonsense. For instance, Media House Ireland, as I said, reported a 14% revenue increase, partly driven by such advertising, illustrating how government spending bolsters newspapers' finances, right? So we have a heavy European influence on Irish national media. We also have the Irish national government taking directives from the EU to get rid of VAT or to reduce the amount of financial expenditure to ease the financial pressure on Irish newspapers, right? Why? It also gives them, it also funds them to release advertisements for them, right? So not only does the Irish government, following EU directives, reduce the tax on Irish newspapers, it also funds them by giving them advertising money and stuff, right? Crazy stuff. Now, and in addition to that, then, a good chunk of our Irish media is owned by European families and European companies. So what does that say about the poll today? Take it with a pinch of salt, right? So you look at these connections. You have Conor McGregor, who's come out and criticised heavily, number one, the Irish government, number two, EU, and today then Tusla. Great, right? He's like, let's have a look at it, let's see if there's wrongdoing there. Great. So with all of that being said, I'll just ask you this one question. Do you think it was a fair poll? Do you think the media coverage from these outlets are going to be fair and impartial towards a Conor McGregor presidency? At least a run for it, right? Make up your own mind, as always.